Calvin T. Mann, leading EMIY, served over 20,000 youth through speaking, coaching, and mentoring. He has inspired us for years. Welcome to EMIY TV Podcast with your host, Calvin T. Mann, the Encourager.
All right. So, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. It is Monday. Solomon Grundy was born on Monday.
Oh, my goodness.
Today, on Put Your Family First podcast, I was told I can't be freaky, so I'm not going to be freaky. But today, it's about self-regulation. And, of course, you know, my silly self, I took it a number of locations and situations. And then there was condemnation. So, we got the queen in the building, and we gonna get this thing popping on self-regulation. But before we do that, you know, I had an interesting conversation today, early this morning, about the magazine cover of Rihanna and the father of her children. And, you know, everybody, you know, people sounded off. You know, it's emasculation, and it was all that, and she make more money than them, and all, you know. Look here. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to let it go. If you a man, and your woman make more than you, and you no longer be or act like a man, then her making more than you is going to be a problem. Dr. David Pate said, who I sent the letter to today, Dr. David Pate said the one thing he didn't understand about black men in particular is that a black man will leave a perfectly good marriage to go to someone who doesn't make more than them just so he can feel like he has the power. He said, in all the 30 years of research, excuse me, he never understood that. And I said, you got to understand, all we hear is provide. That's all we hear. We didn't know none of these other things, right? And so I just wanted to clear my chest, because I was telling the brother on the show that it's bigger than that. But if you want to really have that conversation, you got to be willing to have that conversation. And we're going to have that conversation Saturday at Charles H. Wright Museum with 4 different generations of fathers. If you want to come on out, it's open to the public. You can come out. We ask that you hold your questions and everything until we open up the floor to answer questions. But there will be a lot of dialogue and information that takes place on that day. So, Heather has come up with self-regulation. I had a whole different other topic I was preparing myself for, but now it's self-regulation. So please explain. Bring us to the scope of things.
Well, self-regulation is part of an executive function. So it is part of your cognitive development. It is being able to have a sense of awareness and knowing about what you're doing, what you're experiencing, and the best ways to get to that, kind of how to navigate circumstances or situations. That's kind of the best way to kind of sum that up. So we're going to talk about 4 strategies around self-regulation. So the 4 are self-monitoring, self-talk or self-instruction, goal setting, and then the last one is self-reinforcement. And the reason why I picked this particular topic today is because I think sometimes we kind of gloss over a lot of information, a lot of the tools that we do have. And because we get into a routine of how we behave and what's expected, I think we kind of lose sight that we actually have control over those things. It's just, and people use this reason all the time. Well, that's just how I am. That's just how I do it. This is just my way. And so we kind of lump that mindset into a space as opposed to really doing more reflection. So you notice that at the beginning of all of these words, the compound words that we're talking about is self. This is self-regulation. That means I have to do it. This is self-talk. That means I have to do it. This is self-realization. Means I have to do it. These are my set. That's a really important piece to be conscious and aware of, and not just gloss over like sometimes we do. And this happens, and this is about really the restoration of families. So in our we call them our acceptable culture at home, in school, with our friends or with our peers, we start to develop this mindset of glossing over things as opposed to really getting involved into the shift or the change that we need to see in our own lives. And sometimes the reasons that we give ourselves or other people why we don't do it or why we don't change. And so I think that's an important way to kind of segue into toward the end of this month. We're talking about, this is on many levels. This is Black History Month. This is Black Love Month. So all of these ways that we need to look at ourselves first. We look at ourselves first when it comes to love. You have to love yourself first in order to love someone else. To truly love them, you have to love yourself. And so it's the investment in who you are and who you are to become, in the role that you play in your family, in your household, in your relationship, at work. It fits in any social situation that you might find yourself in. So I thought it was an important topic to have today.
So let me get this right.
Mm-hmm.
So I get to be selfish because it's me. I get to love me for a change, right? I get to be a little selfish. And this self-regulation, the thing that you said that's we have to be really conscious of that a lot of people don't understand. I was just talking to my son about this. The self-talk. And I know you're going to get into this, but the self-talk is where a lot of us get lost. And we listen to it. So I sent my kids, hey, listen, with that self-talk, I want you to evaluate what is the consistency around what is being said. And then tell me what it is that you're doing to smash it. So it was amazing that Cam was able to say, maybe once or so a week. I could see that. You know why? Because he's young. He don't have a lot on his record. And so that self-talk doesn't really have to go at him like that, right? We call it demonic spirits. We call it a number of things. But that self-talk is where you can uplift and grow. So I just wanted to really tap in right there and say that self-talk is going to be a huge one.
It is huge. It is huge. The other ways that we express self-talk is as affirmations, right? Speaking positive. We talk about the law of attraction. What you say, what you do, your energy draws things back to you. Those kinds of ways of thinking. So, but again, at the center of that is what you do. It is self-expressed, and so I think that's really important as we continue to keep kind of moving down navigating this well of self-regulation. So a couple of things. In my research, it talks about how self-regulation is what a lot of our young people need when they're experiencing learning differences. So, or ADHD or autism, all of these areas of the different layers of how people learn differently are these are tools that you can use for that. So it goes deeper into the different strategies that you can use, but we're only just going to focus in on the 4 that I mentioned. So the first one was self-monitoring. And so self-monitoring really is about kind of keeping track of what you're doing, keeping track of why you're doing it. And so you have to have some way to keep track of it. So one of the tools that a lot of people use and a lot of people recommend is journaling. Journaling is a way to self-monitor.
I'm sorry.
So those people who are journaling their day, journaling the things that they're concerned with, that's a way of self-monitoring. Another way of that we use to self-monitor is maybe you're a poet or a rapper, and whatever your experience is, you're sharing it through language. That's another way you can do it. And then you're recording it, or you're keeping it, or you're sharing it, and you're playing that information back so that you can hear it. So the idea is that whatever you do is a way for you to bring it back to your own remembrance. How does it come back to you, and how can you go back and look at those details, or go back and look at those things, so that you have a way to understand what you're doing, what you're going through, what you're experiencing, and how you experience it. So looking at the details differently. Another way that people do it is you make the notes on your phone, right? You can take our phones have the capabilities for recording. It has the capability of doing either a video recording. So that's what we use for social media. A lot of people who do posts, who do the personal posts, they can go back and look at those things that they've recorded and things that they've shared, or the opinions that they've shared publicly. But again, to be able to go back and look at it and monitor, because some of the messages that we might have today may be different from the ones we had yesterday, and vice versa. So, life happens, and sometimes that the way that you felt about a certain issue or a certain challenge that you may have faced is different. What I thought about in terms of what's healthy for me in 2020 may not be the same thing for me in 2023. Right. So, and because things change, circumstances change, the only way that I'm really going to know that if it's some way that I documented that thought or that feeling, that expression in my past, so that I can go back and refer back to it. These are strategies for self-monitoring.
Okay. I'm with you. I just, when you, the key point when you talk about the creativity part, right? When you're talking about the creativity part and how, that self-expression and affirmations, that's all day for me, right?
And that's still in self-talk.
Right, but the point that was made, that's all day for me, right? I'm word porn. I love words. Right? And getting more words and more information is something I'm always trying to do. So maybe that fits in there, maybe not, but continue.
Oh, no. Did Dave just join us?
Yes, he did.
Oh, good. Hey, Dave.
Hey. Still have a little challenges, but we worked it out.
Oh, okay. There we go. I'm sorry. He wasn't up. Yeah, PCR.
How are you today?
Good. I'm good. I'm really good. Thank you. How about you guys?
Good.
Yeah. We are climbing into some of your favorite subject areas, Dave. We're talking about self-regulation.
Yes. Excellent subject.
Yeah, so we just covered self-monitoring. Do you have anything you want to add to self-monitoring? Ways that we can monitor how we do what we do?
Yeah. Self-monitoring or self-regulation and balance is such essential parts of our existence, but it takes a lot to really look at oneself. And I think, as the Bible tells us, let a man examine himself. That's very difficult because you can't regulate what you don't examine, or you can't heal what you don't reveal. And it's very difficult for people to look in that mirror and see the things they don't want to see. We can always look at everybody else, but it's very difficult to look at ourselves. But if we spend more time doing that, I believe that in the end we'll have a little more self-control, and that goes back again to when the Bible tells us in all things at the end, you get self-control.
Right.
So some of the ways we can do that is first just spending time being still. That quiet, still voice that's inside of us will begin to talk to us. Some call it that inner voice, or you have that inner dialogue with yourself. And listening to that voice, in most cases, it will give us the guidance we need to make quality decisions. And I say quality because nobody can make a perfect decision because we don't know the future. We don't know all the elements that exist will curtail us one way or another. But at least if we spend that quality time being still, when I used to study with the Buddhists, that was essential to spend that little time being still, listening to that voice, and then listening to your environment. Where are your surroundings? What's going on around you? And as you begin to do that, you take in information. And as you take that information in, the spirit, if you will, for those who are more spiritual, or the inner mind, the subconscious will begin to regulate according to the information you get. What is appropriate, what's not appropriate. Because we have to look at universal appropriateness and we have to look at what is appropriate for the individual. So as you guys will elaborate a little more, but as you guys go on, yes, self-regulation is essential. A lot of the things we see in our society, we can already determine that people have not developed the skill to learn how to do the checks and balances, especially when you start talking about emotions. Because most of the situations you see people in that are not conducive to their well-being is usually because they lack emotional regulation, emotional intelligence. Because our first essential piece to emotional self-intelligence is self-awareness. So it's so important that we learn how to self-regulate. Again, I think a lot of atrocity we see in the world would not be happening if people develop that skill set.
Well,
Yes.
that goes back to dad.
Yeah. For sure.
It goes back to dad. See, we just didn't value, but go ahead, Sway.
So some of the other ways too that you can track it is through creating a checklist. So the things that you're trying to you want to work on, or you want to see, or you want to mark, right? So here's an example. You want to have a checklist to go to the grocery store. You know that there are things that you need to get. You write it down so that you don't forget. And your check and balance is that once you write it on your list, you have to take it to the market with you, right? So you take it to the market and you check those things off as you pick them up, right? And so that's one of the ways that you can self-regulate, especially if you have difficulty remembering things from moment to moment. But that recall that, oh yes, I forgot this, and have a way to check that list off. So it's another way to look at it, and another strategy that we use kind of in our everyday life. For some people, more than others, may use a checklist process. I use a checklist because I don't want to forget, and or use my time differently.
On the checklist, did you know, Monique, Dave, that they say never go to the grocery store hungry?
Yeah.
Because of that checklist, get to smashing checks. So you went in with 7 items and came out with 30 items.
Yeah, that's a Dollar Tree thing too. Yeah, that's need more regulation when I go, and it's ironic.
Self-regulation.
Yes. So the next area we're going to talk about is our self-talk or self-instruction, and pretty much this is just kind of talking yourself through a task. That's one of the things one of the ways that you can look at it. But there are a couple of ways that we're going to look at it today. So this first one about when you encounter a problem or a situation, you think you pause and say, well, what am I going to do? These are my options. So this is the problem. This is what I need to have as a solution. And so what do I have to do in between those things? So for example, you get a flat tire. You're coming out of work, you have a flat tire, and you're like, okay, what am I going to do? So the first thing you do is start thinking through that process. Okay, so I have a flat tire. I have to get home. I have to go to the market. I have to do something in between this goal or this location. What am I going to do? So you go through a mental process, and you're thinking, so if you're efficient enough to change your own tire, you might say, okay, well, I have all the things I need in the car. I made sure those things were there. it looks like the area is safe, or how do I make it safe so that I can do it safely? I mean, these are the things that you would think about in terms of instructions, right? Then next you might think, okay, I keep my tools in the back of the car or in the trunk, so I need to go and, double check to make sure those things are there. Then it's the matter of, okay, so how does this work together now? How do I get my jack to work? How do I construct that? How do I get the lug nuts off the tire? I mean, it's actually thinking through the process. And so some people think as they go, but internally you're thinking, this is the problem. This is a solution. This is what I need to do, or this is the place I'm trying to get to. And so thinking through like a step-by-step instruction process. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is much what Calvin was talking about earlier, the self-talk. So we use the same situation, but they use it in self-talk. I don't know what to do. I've never changed a tire. I always just call somebody. I call AAA. I don't have to deal with this myself. So this is what we're going to do. And this is an example of the self-talk. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to call AAA. Since I'm a AAA member, I'm going to have them come out and change my tire. And I'm going to wait and see how long it takes, because they're normally going to tell you an estimate of how long it takes. I'm going to call my family, let them know I'm okay, that I had a flat tire, and I'm called AAA. Like, it is actually talking through that process. So you can see and kind of talk yourself down at the same time. I have a plan. I'm not scared. I'm not nervous. It's kind of helping you to calm yourself down as well, to work through that process, to actually talk through that process. So saying that out loud is really helpful, because you get to hear your own words and you can calm yourself the same way. And some people may have anxiety or feel, uneasy or unsafe, depending on the circumstance you're in. So talking it through what you're going to do, looking toward the solution, talking through the solution, even to yourself, is going to be important. Because if you have someone that is expecting you to come home, or they may be worried about you, then now you can explain it to them in a way where you're calm, in a way where it's thoughtful, where they don't have to experience the anxiety that you may have had before you were able to talk yourself down. So that's another way. Calvin, you were talking about self-talk.
Self-talk is just, it's an amazing tool.
Yeah, for sure.
For and against. But the self-talk also comes with experience. And I think a lot of times people they underestimate their self-talk. The first person, right, I was telling you this the other day. Sometimes the advice that you give somebody else, God intended it for you. That's self-talk. Because as soon as I saw the problem that the person was in, I have already calculated what to say. I've already done that. So let me put this out my mouth to someone else. But a lot of times we miss that the very information that we share that came from self-talk to help somebody else, the message was for you. And I stress the component of the self-talk, because self-talk is your creativity. Self-talk is your inventions. Self-talk is problem solving, right? But then there's also where the self-talk is talking so negative to you that you have to calm yourself down. And one of the best methods, this is for anybody, is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And move on. I find myself being under attack. It's the first thing I say to myself, and I don't even open my mouth a lot of times. But I'm talking to myself, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I move on. Because it has a tendency to stay as long as you participate. As long as I participate in that negative self-talk, it will stay. The object is to get rid of it, right? And that's that little trick. Everyone uses it. I mean, the psychiatrists, number of people, authors, people, they use that to move on, because self-talk is also destructive talk. Self-talk will talk you right into prison. Self-talk can take you right into jail, a casket, right? So you got to be careful of what you're saying to yourself, but more importantly, listen to what you're going to put out, because self-talk has created a monument of great things. And we have to see that self-talk in a way that is positive, because the negative self-talk, again, it'll have you in the wrong area.
And you can talk yourself out of something good as well.
Yes.
You can talk yourself out of a decision. Maybe just you're nervous or anxious about a decision, so you're like, okay, well, and this could be even going to an important event. I know I tend to get nervous sometimes when I have something important to do, and I would rather go and crawl under a rock, but I don't allow that feeling of being anxious to have a greater influence on me than what I know I need to do. And so, and it's just nerves. I know a lot of people that have that with speaking in public. They feel very uncomfortable speaking in public, and so they kind of work themselves up where nobody's going to hear me, nobody's going to pay any attention, I'm going to embarrass myself, and they start with all of the negative self-talk to talk themselves out of it. And it starts to sound bigger and bigger, and like you're more and more buying into that idea the more you say it. And so the same thing works with positive self-talk. And when we talk about positive self-talk, that's where we're often talking about affirmations and using affirmations. Dave, you have something to share?
Yeah, I think what you guys said is so essential when it comes down to self-talk. The mind, or the subconscious mind, is like the ground, and it's ready to absorb the seeds that you plant in it. So if you're planting negative seeds, because again, you have to be careful what you take in, because what you take in eventually will come out. So if obviously you plant crabgrass into the ground, then you're going to grow crabgrass. If you plant roses, you're going to grow roses. So this self-talk comes from the information we take in. And as we take in information, we should have our ears tuned to the most positive things possible. That's not always available to us, because a lot of times we hear a lot of negativity, but that's where the filtering comes into play. When God gave us the statement that I didn't give you the spirit of fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind, he gave us a mind that could filter the things that are negative out. And too often we listen to a lot of things that we think, oh, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal, but it's getting into who we are. So obviously, if I bombard you, when I studied with Spec Howard, I went into broadcast media. And one of the things that they would do was, as we get a feed for the news that happened in the day, they would have us rewrite the information. So obviously, you only get part truth, because we want to create a level of sensationalism that makes people respond accordingly. We want to tap into your emotions. So as you said earlier about going to public speaking, so they say that is probably one of the greatest fears versus, death itself, because people are so preoccupied with their own image and their pride that they'd be afraid to step out into the unknown. One of the things I used to tell my soldiers that, when you go into a situation like a war zone and get ready to fight, courage is not the absence of fear. It's stepping into that which you're afraid the most to take on what you train for the most. So again, if you don't put in the right seeds into your fertile ground, then you're not going to produce the right outcome. So the best way to be able to, if you will, be able to have the positive self-talk is to ensure that you, as Calvin liked to say, I feed on things. You feed on the positive things that you're talking about now, being able to regulate yourself in a way that every time somebody gives you some negativity, you say, okay, well, how does this really apply to my life and the objectives of what I'm trying to achieve for my life? We sit down, we listen to everybody talking negative about someone. That has an impact. I notice that with our boys. When our boys hear something negative, it causes an emotional charge that causes them to not see the positive things they're capable of doing. So then Calvin, Victor, myself, or you have to come over and say, hey, look at yourself this way. But then we're pouring into them something that is positive in, positive out. So it's really essential what we take in. It really comes down to being able to regulate every bit of information as much as possible to increase your high probability of success in being a positive person.
Indeed. Thank you. I wanna stress that we're talking about adults and kids. We're talking about our family unit, because this particular podcast is really a focus on the restoration of families and how do we do that better? What are some of the nuances that are happening in our families where the potential for success or the potential for our families to face challenges and trauma? Where are those things and how can we intervene? How can we shift and change those things? So a self-regulation is one of the tools or strategies that we have at our disposal that we can practice to help shift the dynamic of what's happening in our families, what's happening in what we call acceptable culture. These are the things and these are the ways that we can change them. So I do want to also indicate that with self-talk, it's still the process of talking through the problem to the solution. That is the one of the benefits of it as a strategy. Talk through the problem to the solution, or talk through the fear to the courage. Talk through the negative to the positive. That is one of the strategies that we have been given in this term under self-regulation. So we have two more to review. This next one is really goal setting. Having a vision for an outcome. Our goals help us to set whatever it is that we're trying to reach or achieve, whatever task that it takes to make that happen. Set a goal. Part of self-regulation is your own goal. And so we do it all the time. But again, if you're not reflective about it, if you don't recognize it when you're doing it, you do some things on autopilot. So even at the start of your day, you may say, okay, so what are the things we have to do today? And then you kind of go through your mental checklist. And as we talked about, even going to the grocery store with your checklist, the goal is to get everything on your list. And for me, the goal is everything on my list within my budget. And so I'm mindful that I have those two things that I'm trying to achieve. I'm going to try to achieve getting everything on my list, and I'm trying to achieve doing that within my budget. And so, along the way, you have to make some tweaks. So I might have to choose between name brand or generic brand or store brand. I might have to choose, instead of getting the 24-roll bathroom tissue, I'm only going to get the 12-roll bathroom tissue. I mean, just along your journey, how do you achieve the goal, the task? What is it that you set out to do? And what did you have to do to get to that, to meet that desired end, that outcome? That's how we're looking at goals. Goals can be short-term. They can be long-term. They can be huge goals like buying a house, or it could be something as small, or not so small, but as small as drinking 8 glasses of water a day. We need to be setting our goals for that anyway, that and more, but that is a place to start. So how do I go about what's my task? What are my steps to getting to just drinking eight cups of water a day? So one of the and I'm just going to use this as an example. One of the things that I make sure that I do, if I have 4 bottles of 16-ounce bottles of water, I've got my eight cups of water, my 8-ounce cups of water in a day. That's one of the strategies I use to make sure that I'm getting at least my baseline of 8 cups of water a day. And I'm saying using 8-ounce cups. So our goals that we set, again, sometimes we can put ourselves on autopilot and not really think through the process. But when we're talking about self-regulation, we're talking about those things to help you, your family, help you to navigate the circumstances and the situations that you may be facing. So that's an important part of goal setting. Calvin, your thoughts?
Family goal setting is huge. People don't even understand. Just starting your day by making your bed is the beginning of you moving into the proper routine. So you can actually, it is just an amazing thing to know that the start of your goals starts with making your bed. So that triggers everything else that goes through that process. As family, goal setting is for a lot of us, goal setting is tough to follow. Because of the emotional breakup in between, you have to really focus to accomplish certain goals in a certain time frame and really be at it. Like that's And so to shift your family to this mindset would just be absolutely amazing for your home, because now you have a sense of order. By setting goals, you get a sense of order, so you don't have clutter. You don't have. If you just winging it, you got somebody. You better hope you got somebody like I do come get your shoes. Because me, I'll come in and take my shoes off right where I stop. Right? So, but order requires for those shoes to be in a certain place. So within the family structure, if everyone is on board with the goals, a lot happens. So that's just so important that when you're talking about self-regulation, just really being able to maintain. I was asked the question, I think you asked me, it's like, what's on your mind? I was like, I was getting ready to go this, and then I said it was me. Because saying all the other stuff was the negative self-talk. But it was me, right? And what it was about me achieving my goal come March 18th. Got a whole story I'm going to share. So come March 18th, I got to reach this goal, right? And it's in my book, it's on paper, so I know I got to get it done. So that's what was on my mind. But I think a lot of times we underestimate, Dave, when we put the vision on paper and we don't read it. We underestimate that portion of writing and make it plain, and then setting that tone in your household for your family to function properly. I just think we underestimate that.
Yeah, I think that it's essential that it is applicable to every area of our lives, especially within the family, because in the family, hopefully, that is the beginning of your journey in regards to educating yourself to prepare for life and what it's going to bring, because there are more unpredictables than there are predictables in our lives. So one of the things, as Heather was saying, when she said mindfulness, I said thought of mindfulness, and she had brought out, and then I thought about intentional discipline and being faithful to whatever you set out to do. And then you make the point, we bring this home to the boys about making your bed. Well, that's probably where you spent, quote unquote, 8 hours in an environment and untapped. So now you wake up and you just start running. But if you take that time to begin to straighten, like me, in the Army, that's the way it is. You don't leave your house, leave your environment unless you make your bed. Well, when I was growing up, because I grew up in a military family, you didn't leave the house till you made your bed. So order began right then. And order was about that intentional discipline to ensure that my environment that I'd sleep in, and then if anybody doubled back, I would see that my environment has some order. And so we have to be disciplined about order. You know, that acronym SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. All that is applicable to how we begin our day, because it's also going to apply to us being able to regulate. So just having the ability to be faithful enough to make up your bed, you're beginning to regulate how your day is going to go. Now, if you get up and your bed is already chaos and you leave your bed chaos, then when you come home, it's going to be chaos. So there's things that we have to do when it comes down to moving into checks and balances about how we start our day and how we regulate our day that's intentional, especially when it comes down to a family. We can see the chaos in family now because, with all due respect, there's no order. There's no order. Kids don't have to make up their bed. Kids don't have to take out the garbage. Kids don't have to do any chores. They don't have to do nothing. Well, if I'm not accountable, responsible to anything, why would you expect I'd be that way once I hit the public? Why would I be that way? There's no order, so why would I have any order? So all that's is Apple, and as you said, this is all about family, because once we can regulate the family, we can regulate everything outside of the family.
Indeed. Our last self-regulation strategy is self-reinforcement. And so self-reinforcement is really about rewarding yourself for going through the process, rewarding yourself for achieving the goal, rewarding yourself for maintaining your journal entries, rewarding yourself for me, going to the market, getting everything on my checklist within budget. That gives me room to sometimes get the extra something special that I wanted for myself. And so that's how I reward myself from going through this process, because I do know, even just it's most for some people, you go to a grocery store, you get everything you need. I'm lucky to have somebody take all the groceries out of the car for me. However, my process really just starts when I get the groceries home. It is a very tedious process. I wash everything. I wash and disinfect everything I bring into the house. Every piece of fruit, every grape, every strawberry, I wash all completely before I put them in the hands of my family. So before I even put those things away, it's already another hour or 45 minutes before I've put all the groceries away. So I believe that once I have achieved that goal, that I am going to reward myself with something that I want or something that I like. And so whatever it takes to do that, that is my, that is for me. That is how I reward myself.
I eat ice cream, cupcakes.
Not always, but some
Chips.
salted caramels. OMG, yes.
Chocolate truffles.
Or I might just play my music extra loud. I might sing out of tune. I might do those things that make me feel good. So just to get through that process. But it is important that as you are achieving your goals, that there is something at the end of it for you that is more than just the intrinsic value of it. The intrinsic value of completing something is extremely important. But we're talking about, as we're in a family unit, you don't want to get so caught up into rewarding behavior with things. Because we can get, sometimes we can get lost in that everything has to be rewarded with something. So, for example, there's a part of our culture where you may reward somebody for bringing home what we call a good report card. So maybe your good report card is all A's and B's, and you get $1 for every, or $5 for every A and $1 for every B. And maybe you get 50 cents or 25 cents for a C. For a D, you may get 10 cents. But you don't reward, if you get lower than a D. And so it may be dependent upon how that particular family structure is ordered and what they need to do to incentivize, somebody getting grades and acknowledging their grades. The challenge sometimes with that, when we reward things that have intrinsic value with money, is that you start expecting to, you expect to have money. Some people, maybe it's like that for birthdays. Maybe, you're expecting to get money for your birthday. And so when your birthday comes around, maybe your family is not as able during a particular birthday to contribute financially like that. Does that take away from celebrating your birthday? No, it doesn't. But if you set up the expectation that you're supposed to get money for every birthday, every year you reach or you get older, you set that up as a reward. It can also, if it doesn't happen, what does that say to the person? Your birthday is not important, or you're not important. Does it communicate that back to them? If they were raised with that in their mindset, that every year you're supposed to give me money, and I didn't get money this year, so maybe I'm not as valuable or don't have the same worth. We can set our families up like that. And sometimes we do. It's not intentional, and we wonder why our kids are so entitled or have that entitlement attitude, because we set them up for that. And so now we're trying to correct and say, well, no, you don't have to get something for everything. You say, well, you've done it for the last 17 years. I'm 18 now. Where's my stuff? We set our family sometimes that way too. Around Christmas or holidays, we buy all of these amazing things, sometimes overdone, and then you have the expectation every year that, and my husband calls this rewarding negative behavior. But regardless of what you did through the course of that year or leading up to that, regardless of what your grades are, you're going to have this amazing Christmas. What are you What are you teaching in your family structure? What values and principles are you bringing to that structure when that is the structure that you're setting up? It is a challenge, and when you are able to step back and then look into that situation and step forward, it gives you some insight. That's why one of the things that is important for us is that initial step that we talked about in self-regulation, self-monitoring. Are we monitoring how our kids or our mates or our spouses are responding to what we're doing? Are they responding in a way that is increasing a sense of entitlement, or it's increasing a sense of this is what makes me important, or this is what I deserve because I X, whatever your X might be. So we have to be mindful that this is a part of, these are some of the ways that we structure our acceptable culture, what's happening in our families, same thing in communities. So I think that's an important insight to make sure that we keep in the forefront as we look at how we self-regulate.
So that part right there, self-reinforcement. Dave, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Heather put it together pretty good, and again, no farmer should ever expect to get a harvest they don't plant the right seeds, right? Or any seeds whatsoever. And as you said earlier, you don't want to reward negative behavior. But there should be some end goal, that kind of keeps you inspired and motivated. It just has to be appropriate to what you invested in. Mm-hmm. And so again, if you reward your child for any kind of behavior that they do, just because you don't want to hurt their feelings, then you set them up. As I once told my son, okay, I used to put the fish on the table. Now you're at an age where I'm going to teach you how to fish. And now you're at the age where your reel may break at times. I'll help you mend it. But I'll never return back to putting the fish on the table, because you now have to do your part. And I remember his friend got upset when he got his first job. So he said, they try to work me like a Mississippi slave. And I said, well, why you say that? He said, because they wanted me to do all this stuff all through the day for 8 hours. I say, they pay you for each hour. And I say, there's a difference between chores and work. And then now if you expect to get a check, you expect to get a check because you thought all you had to do was one thing and then go back and play, then you're not going to get that check. I say, but now when you put in those 8 hours, which is an investment of your time, they reward you for that time. So reinforcement, and that's what we all look for. At the end of the day, when we do our due diligence, we expect some kind of reward. But the reward should be appropriate to the measure of investments that we put in. Nobody should be going to their bank account. They never put a dime in, expect $1 million to be there. So I think what she said is essential.
Well, I'm big on the not rewarding negative behavior. I think that's absolutely the destructive pattern that is harming the kids, period. Having the conversation that you feel like this makes you a great parent by you doing everything for your kid, and then buying everything, and then keep going, and then turning up in front of them, and then, right, these kids are going to mimic what they see. So if you're not accountable, right, and you don't self-reinforce the proper way so they can see that good things that you have done, you rewarded yourself for. That's another learning lesson that I can learn from. So let me reinforce. So lately, what you want, Cal? So lately, I'm doing things that I want because I deserve that. And it's not that I really saw myself, because usually one of my favorite patterns was, after accomplishing something, more work. Let's go. Let's keep it going. But I wasn't pausing. Now I'm pausing. Now I'm taking breaks, right? And I'm letting my mind work a little more for me, right? So I'm reinforcing the good to myself. You should be proud. That's hard for some of us men. When we see so many problems, we underestimate, and this is me getting on my horn, but we underestimate what the man sees, because we talk, and y'all talk, and you talk, and you're constantly talking to the man, and you underestimate what he sees. So when he decides to express wisdom, you don't want to hear that. It's like, what you talking? You ain't talked before. You're not accustomed. That's rewarding negative behavior. If you don't stop a person and you just let them go on, you're rewarding that. They never got to know. Shut up. You know what I mean? Not right now. Don't say that. You know what I mean? You got to speak up, because what has happened is we don't value or celebrate ourselves. We go to work, we come home, we get into bed, start all over. We responsible for this, we do this, we got to be on guard like a wolf all the time. You got to pay attention to everything, right? And as soon as you take a break, you know what I mean? The break only lasts so long, you right back on hunt. So you got to pay attention, right? Because this is what comes with the territory. They do not value that because we don't value. So I said this year I was going to do a little bit more, celebrating Cal. I deserve that, right? So let's do that, right? But this positive reinforcement, parents, should only happen when they do what they're supposed to do. Positive reinforcement, when your husband come home, is greeting him consistently with care and love. See, if I come home and you in the house with attitude, we're going to have problems all the time. All the time. If I come home, or you come home and I'm in the house and I got an attitude when you walk up, we're going to have problems. That's just the way it's going to be. But if you positively reinforce your love when you walk through the door, hey, baby, how you doing? Expressing the value that you brought to the person's life, reinforcing to yourself that this is my wife, I'm in good hands, she's in good hands, and we on the same page. Too many times, we think that we smarter than somebody. We think that they right, and so now you going outside, and you talking to your girlfriend who's single, and she talking to you and she telling you about all the bars and the trips, and now you want to get out and you want to hang. And the same for the dude. You talking to guys that's really single, and he reinforcing your foolishness when you need him to reinforce your goodness. Go home. Take care of your family. You don't need to be out here. We do too much of that. So I really wanted to just tap into that, because that positive reinforcement, I think I'm going to bathe in it this year, 2023. Dave, I feel the word I should use is cocky. I feel a little cocky, Dave. Right? You know what I mean? And so, Heather and Dave, tell them where they can meet you at.
You can. Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Heather. Okay.
You can reach me at yourinspiredwithad.journey.com, or that's my website, or you can reach out to me by phone at 313-759-7855.
You can reach me at David FMAM Patterson at Facebook.com, or you can reach me at DROM7 at Yahoo.com, or you can reach me at 608-343-0875.
So I think I got a couple minutes. So just a couple, right? So the object that we want to be clear is how important your family is, right? Right? Those are married live longer. Those are married have more, right? Not necessarily that you can look at it, because everybody wants to look at marriages and say negative things, because you have a lot of single environments. So you can tell me, you hear it all the time. But quality love requires two. Reinforcing that in front of your children is impactful. In many situations, the kids, they may not like it. You know, when you, like me, divorced parent, they may not like the situation, but they sure see their daddy happy. Right? So it make them take a look like, man, you really happy. Yeah, I'm supposed to show you this. And reinforce it. This is what it looks like. Not where it's toxic, not where it's hateful, not where it's divided. You know what I mean? So self-regulation requires us all to take a look at ourselves, as Dave said. Right? Evaluate yourself, as the Bible said. Take time to look and evaluate yourself. See where you are. And more importantly, make sure that you take steps to improve where you're going. Because, again, your checklist, your goals, and everything else ain't going to be nothing if you don't start self-regulating yourself anyway. That discipline, one of my favorite quotes, you can get it at Emmy Apparel real soon, the new EMIapparel.com. Discipline is loyalty to oneself. Discipline is for you. That's you. Everybody ain't good at it. I struggle with it. Everybody not good with discipline. But if you keep chopping at it and moving it and setting goals, you can accomplish some things. You can get some things done. So if you want a quality relationship and a quality family, you can do that. But you're going to have to come to a consensus and a compromise. You're going to have to give up some things to get some things. Do you know how to merge? Do you know how to positively self-reinforce? My name is Calvin Mann, president and founder of Encourage Me Among Good Fathers Only. I love my daddy's records. God bless you and encourage me. I'm young. Peace.